will follow.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Trinity Talk Live, water cooler conversation from a Christian perspective. I'm Ken Coughlin, and today I am joined by two new guests who, contrary to popular belief, are not related. I had to clarify that before we got started here today. Seated to my right is Dylan Brown. Dylan is 18 years old, and he is a sophomore at Harford Community College here in Harford County, Maryland. He spends a lot of his time working with the youth here at Trinity by teaching Sunday school or leading the middle school crossfire group. Thank you very much for joining us, Dylan.
I'm glad to be here.
And seated to my left is Nikki Brown. Again, no relation that they know of. They're going to do Ancestry.com once they're done here today. Nikki is 20 years old. She's been here at Trinity since she was about 2. In a couple of weeks, she's going to be going into her senior year at Eastern University in Pennsylvania, where she is majoring in psychology with hopes to pursue a career involving counseling. Thank you very much for joining us, Nikki.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we are going to go ahead and launch right into our current events segment. I got 3 stories for you guys today. The first one is about a new Pew Research Center study, which has found that millennials are replacing church with other things like social media, fitness, and food. The study found that only 27 to 28% of millennials regularly attend religious services. However, the millennial generation is still seeking a religious connection. They're just expressing their spirituality through other means other than traditional church services. For example, one 27-year-old millennial who was part of the study, who attends a fitness class, explained in somewhat spiritual terms why the class is such an important part of her routine. And she said this. She said, "Fitness has allowed me to connect to my inner self more than sitting through a religious service. A great instructor provides spiritual guidance and builds a community." Other participants had similar descriptions for things like social media and food, where they were almost describing it in almost like a spiritual experience. So millennials, according to the study, still have a craving for spiritual things, but increasingly they're seeking to fulfill those cravings somewhere other than church, through other avenues. The second story today is from Jeff Durbin. He is the pastor of Apologia Church and Apologia Studios. He has launched a new late-night talk show via Facebook Live called Next Week with Jeff Durbin. The show is similar to other late-night talk shows in that it discusses politics and current events, but it tries to do so with a comedic twist and from a Christian perspective. This started to sound a little familiar to me as I was reading this. I don't know anybody else who's tried a similar concept. We're more daytime talk show than late-night talk show, though, I think. We don't have a band. Anyway, it describes itself as the late-night show with the unpopular opinion. Not as catchy as water cooler conversation from a Christian perspective, but I think it's still pretty good. It gets the point across, right? So the show's head writer, a gentleman by the name of Chris Wineland, actually was formerly a comedy writer for Jimmy Fallon, so he's got some experience in that field. The show airs every Tuesday evening at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook Live. And our last story for today is about actor Matthew McConaughey. In a recent appearance on Good Morning America, he shared a fun little story about how he and his wife arrived at the name Levi for their son, who's now 9 years old. Levi is another name for Matthew in the Bible, he said. We had talked about possibly Matthew Jr. if he was a boy, and my favorite verse in the Bible is Matthew 6:22, which says, "The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light." Well, McConaughey and his wife didn't find out the sex of their baby until it was born, and they hadn't finally decided on a name yet at that point in time. So when the doctor came in with the birth certificate and everything and told them what time the child was born at 6:22, which matched up perfectly with the passage. And at that point, they said, "Okay, we get it. Levi it is." So interesting story. So let me start over here with Dylan and ask you, of those 3 stories, did anything stand out to you?
I really like the last story about Matthew McConaughey and his son, because it shows that God, he doesn't have to do big things. He can just show little things to get his point across. Like the time the baby was born, it was 6:22. Like, what are the odds of that? It's never going to happen unless God's like actually doing something. And it just shows us that God's always there, and he shows up in more little things than big things.
Nikki, what about you? What stood out there?
I think I really liked the story about Matthew McConaughey, but I think the one that really stood out to me was the first story, whereas I wanted to be surprised that there were so few millennials taking part in actual church services, but despite the fact that I actually go to a Christian university, those numbers did not surprise me. I think God can use alternative methods, so if there's, someone who, joins like a Facebook group that posts maybe scripture and stuff, that's cool. But I also think it can be dangerous to not have a place that's wholly designed for worshiping God or being with God. It's very easy, especially on a platform as huge as, like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. There's so much feeding into it. It can kind of slip you up a little bit sometimes. So that was really interesting to me, that people are trying to replace church with something more instant gratification-esque, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, Ben was on the show a couple weeks ago, and one of the things he commented on was a lot of people, even if they do still claim to be Christian, they might be trying to replace church with something else that they justify to themselves. Oh, it's the same thing. And, let's face it, one of the things, shows like this that people will quite often use maybe as kind of replacements. Oh, I got to watch Trinity Talk Live, or the pastor's sermon video was online this past week. And that's all well and good for somebody. There are homebound people who can't make it to church, and so we do want to provide that service to them so they can still see it. But it doesn't replace actually coming into a community of believers. And so resources like this, programs like this, are really intended to supplement and to kind of help build up and encourage people during the week when they're not coming into the church service, but they should never, ever take the place of a church service. And I think you're seeing a lot of that, people do that too, is they just kind of try to get their God dose digitally, so to speak. So good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. We're going to move into our topic of the week. Our topic of the week this week is, what is it like to be a Christian in college? And like I mentioned last week, this is part 2 of a 4-week series that we're doing on family and back to school here in the month of August. Last week, for those of you that, if you missed the episode, last week was about how to properly prioritize your time at work and your time with your family and how to balance those out. This week, we're talking about being a Christian in college. Next week, we're going to be talking about being a Christian in high school. And then the following week, the 4th week, we're going to be talking about cyberbullying and what we can do about cyberbullying, something that a lot of our kids are facing today. But what I want to do is, we've planned this episode for a few months now. Matter of fact, back in June, we kind of tackled this topic, but more from a parental perspective of what can parents do to help prepare their kids for going to college. And even back when I did that, I wanted to do an episode here with more people who are actually experiencing it. So I'm glad we finally got around to this. But my plans for how to start out the topic kind of changed yesterday. And they changed yesterday because of this lady right here, who helped to deliver the sermon yesterday, along with Ben Lander, who regular viewers of the show know Ben very well. He's been on the show 3 times. And they gave a skit. And what I want to do is I want to take a moment here right now, and let's watch that skit for a second, and then we'll talk about it afterwards, okay? So let's just take a second.
Oh, hey, Jesus.
Hey, Nikki. What you doing?
Talking about structure, spontaneity, how we respond to interruptions,
Oh, I'm not interrupting you, am I?
No. Actually, now that you're here, I have something for you.
Your heart.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to have this?
Yep.
You do realize that whoever holds this makes all of the decisions, right?
Yeah, and you make the best decisions. You know what's best for me, so I wanted you to have it.
As long as you're sure.
I'm sure.
All right. Well, thank you.
Hello? Hey, girl. Shopping? Oh, I have like $5 in my bank account right now. Just with the semester coming up in a couple weeks, I don't...
You can't go out tonight.
I can't go out tonight. I'll tell you what. I know where my mom's credit card is, and maybe I can slip off with it. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Hey, Nikki.
What?
What's going on?
What do you mean?
Well, I kind of only have this little corner of your heart.
Oh, I don't know what happened. Here, take it.
You want me to have this?
I want you to have it.
I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
Totally.
No problems here.
There's no problem.
Whoever has this makes all the decisions.
Yes, it's yours.
All right, let's start over. So, Nikki, I've noticed recently that you started kind of losing your cool when things don't
Okay,
go your way.
okay.
And
Here's the thing. I know what you're going to say.
you do?
I do. Oh, Nikki, you shouldn't get so out of control. You know, you're 20 years old, you're an adult, you're in college, you make your own decisions, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I'm under a lot of stress right now. I don't really know if you understand.
I know you're under a lot of pressure.
Yeah, that's an understatement. I really don't think you fully grasp how much pressure I'm under. This is a major crossroads in my life. I'm about to start my senior year of college.
I know, I'm Jesus.
Yes, I know that you know, but I'm the one living it.
I'm right here with you. All I'm saying is that your attitude's a choice.
I know it's a choice. I fully get that.
All right, look, Nikki, this isn't gonna work.
What do you mean?
I mean, we both can't hold on to your heart at the same time. If we fight over it, then it's gonna rip, and I don't want that to happen.
I know, I want you to have it.
I can't just take it. You have to give it to me.
I am giving it to you, look.
Look, Nikki, you need to make a choice.
I don't know if I can.
You just did.
See, now that's funny. That's how you communicate. Communicate through humor.
I really enjoyed that skit. It was so much fun to watch, and it really spoke to me.
Me too. And that's kind of why I wanted to. I thought when I saw that, it's like the timing was perfect because it provides a really great launching point for, I think, this episode and this topic. Because when I watched that, I thought, that was me. That's exactly who I was in college. A lot of people that go to college might still claim the moniker of being Christian, so to speak. But if you look at their life, they're not going to church. They kind of have the attitude, and I guess the best way to describe, my wife's described me this way a number of times, because I still struggle with it, even to this day, is I struggle sometimes with an attitude of like, it's okay, God, I got this. You know, I got it. I don't need you for right now. I might need you later, so if you could just stand by.
Yeah.
Okay, but for this one, I think I got this under control. Well, my entire college experience was that. It was kind of like, oh, sure, Jesus, here, have my heart. Oh, wait, but let me do this. Oh, wait, but let me do that. And I wasn't letting him make the decisions. So I think that college is a time, I mean, let's face it, that's kind of when we say, okay, you're a kid, and now you're going to become an adult. And college is the time you're supposed to learn to become your own person, to become your own adult. And so you get a certain degree of independence that maybe you didn't have before. But with that comes responsibility, and I think there's a lot of temptation that maybe it's not like it's the first time you're feeling temptation in your life, but maybe you're feeling it in a new way, because now there's a certain safety net when you're still a kid, and you know your parents maybe or guardians are still kind of controlling a little bit more what you see, what you do, and now for the first time it's like, okay, I'm making my own decisions more, and it kind of allows maybe temptation to creep in a little bit more. And so I do think you see people giving in to that. And so I don't want to speak on it too much, because let's face it, I'd like to think of myself as still a younger individual, but I'm not. It's been a few years since I was in college. I'm more interested in hearing what you guys have to say. And so let me start over here with Nikki. In your experience at college, have you witnessed this? Have you seen either yourself or other people having to struggle with temptations and maybe not quite handling it the way they should?
Yeah, I think no matter where you go to college, that's definitely going to be an issue that everybody faces. Like even going to a rather conservative Christian school, constantly there's temptation at every turn, because you know your parents aren't there. So there's the fun kind of freedom where you're like, they can't tell me I can't eat ice cream for breakfast. But there's also that lack of parents where, say, like if you're a younger freshman and you have some upperclassmen friends and they're like, hey, we got some alcohol, do you want in? It would be so easy to just say, yes, I'm 19, but I'm going to drink with you, as opposed to saying, you know, what would Jesus do? Which then usually the answer is Jesus wouldn't have gotten himself in this situation in the first place. But it's really important to just kind of take a step back, because without that safety net, as you were saying, it's really easy to just like dive into a decision without thinking about it first, because, you know, who's going to tell you you can't?
Well, depending on the decision, the police might eventually, but then it's too late,
That's
right?
very true, yeah.
And Dylan, you don't attend a Christian university.
I don't attend a Christian university. I actually still live at home and drive to school, so I still have that safety net a little bit. But even when you go into college, parents, they give you more freedom. And even with that safety net there, that freedom, you have a car, you can go and do whatever you want with friends.
Does that mean I have to get my daughter a car when she goes to college?
No.
I mean, no. It might help. It might help, unless you want her to walk. Yeah, freedom is very tempting. You can go out. It's like, oh, I didn't have this in high school. I can go out later. I can go out and do more stuff. My parents don't. They still care, but they don't check up as much.
You and I shot a promo a few months ago
We did.
About the group here at Trinity called Revolution.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit here about what is your role in Revolution and what is Revolution, and what do you guys do there that might help people who are in your situation where they're being tempted in college, and the importance of groups like that.
So Revolution is a young adult Bible study we have. It's not just for people in college, but anyone who's transitioning from youth to adult. And we take anyone in who needs it. We get together, we talk about life, we do Bible studies, we hang out, have fun. And if you want to be serious, you can be serious. If you don't want to be serious, you don't have to be serious. Like, there's a lot of times where we watch the videos for the Bible study and we just make jokes the entire time. Or if it's something that speaks to someone, we'll take it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very good. I enjoy leading it, and I think it helps a lot of people out.
Let me ask you, Nikki, you go to a Christian university.
Yes.
All right. You still see people that are dealing with temptation there.
Oh, yes.
So Dylan's I don't know why I want to say he's lucky here in the sense that he's still local, so he's still connected here with Trinity. He has this Revolution group that he can go to and others can go to. What types of things do you do at your school to help you stay connected with God and avoid those types of temptations?
I think going to a Christian university definitely kind of gives me a leg up because we have, like Wednesday night worship sessions, and we have like some Bible-based classes and stuff that can serve as a Bible study. But also, I think just a lot of the choices made, you have to really be conscious of. For example, like when it comes to music, I'm an absolute metalhead. And so kind of going away to college where I don't have the barrier and I'm more susceptible to temptation, I kind of had to take a step back and evaluate, the types of things I'm listening to, the programs that I'm watching, just kind of making sure that if they're not Christian, they have a positive effect, because it helps keep me in check. And also just keeping your Bible around, honestly. If it's like right within arm's reach, if you ever need it, it's there. If you don't need it, it's still there, and you do. So
If you don't need it, you need it.
yeah, if you think you don't need it, you really need it. But yeah, I think just being mindful overall. You don't have to outright be like, today I am going to draw crosses on everything that I come across. But if you just kind of keep it in your heart and keep it in the back of your head and let that kind of guide you through whatever you do, I think that's really helpful.
Something you said I'm going to use to promote a future episode we're going to have here. You mentioned that you're a metalhead and keeping an eye on what you're using for entertainment and everything like that, and what you're allowing in. We're actually on September 19th, I believe it is. If that's a Tuesday, you can check me on that. We're going to do an episode on honoring God in entertainment, and I just got confirmation yesterday that Alan Scott, the lead singer of the Alan Scott Band, is going to be one of our guests for that show.
Awesome.
So that is really,
That's
really
so
cool.
cool.
Very cool.
So if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe to the channel, because that's an episode you're not going to want to miss. So anyway, getting back to the ideas about it. Well, how do you deal with this? I was looking at, there was an article on the website was called like thoughtco.com. I wasn't particularly familiar with this, but it was an article by a lady named Kelly Mahoney called Being Christian on a Secular Campus, Keeping the Faith at a Non-Christian College. But a lot of what she said there, it's like, I think it applies no matter what. It's not like the moment, yes, if you go to a Christian college, there are more opportunities that maybe you wouldn't have at a secular university, but it's not like temptation disappears and it's still there. And what she said in this article, a lot of it is stuff you guys have hit on, As you mentioned, ways to help build up and secure your faith and to guard your heart while you're there. Joining a Christian fellowship group of some sort. Going to church, and this is something I've impressed upon my daughter already, and she's just 15. She's just finished her freshman year in high school. Matter of fact, she'll be on the show next week. But it's like, look, when you go out on your own, if you're out on your own, if you're still here local, like Bill, and you're going to college locally, then stay connected with the church, all right? If you're going out of town, then make sure you have that kind of, I don't know, you have like Wednesday night, you're saying that actually the university has Wednesday night studies, which is kind of cool. But if you're going to like a secular university that they don't have those opportunities, find a church where you can go to. I didn't do that when I went off to college, and I think that's largely was responsible for my drifting away during those 4 years because I didn't have that connection with fellow believers on a regular basis, and you're much more likely to give into temptation if you don't have that. She also mentioned starting a Bible study, doing daily devotionals. You've got, in today's technological era, I've got 2 daily devotional apps on my phone right now that I can pull out every single morning and do at least 1 or 2 different devotionals every single morning to help you stay connected. Standing up for your beliefs. If someone is putting down your faith, stand up. Now, 1 Peter 3:15, use gentleness and respect. But you're going to learn more about your faith, I think, if you don't just sit back passively when somebody starts bashing God and just letting it happen. You politely, respectfully challenge people, Mm-hmm. And then the last thing she said was asking for help. Don't be ashamed to ask for help. Too many people, I think, nowadays are afraid to do that. So there was a Barna Group study that came out in 2006 that talked about disengagement. What happens is you have teens who are exposed to the church, exposed to the Christian message while they're teenagers, and then drifting away from that when they get out on their own and they go to college. And it said 61% of young adults, and this is again about 11 years ago, this is 2006, had been churched at one point during their teen years, but were now spiritually disengaged. And what they meant by that is they were not actively attending church, reading the Bible, or praying. They said only about 1/5 of 20-somethings had managed to maintain a level of spiritual activity consistent with their high school experiences. So whatever they were doing in high school, they kept doing. And about another 1/5 of teens, 19%, were never significantly reached by the Christian community of faith during their teen years, so they didn't obviously continue into their 20s. But it actually continued onward. The trend, it wasn't just something that, okay, in 4 years of college and then they're back at it as soon as they get back out of college. It kind of continued into the 30s and stuff that you still saw some level of disengagement. It is true that this phenomenon of teens becoming less engaged when they go off on their own to college or whatever, it does tend to be lessened in evangelical Christian schools than it is for those who attend secular schools, but it's still there, even in evangelical Christian schools. So what types of things, let me start with Nikki on this one, have you witnessed anything in your college experience that maybe you've seen other students or doing this, or do you have any brilliant insights to give us about why this might be happening?
I think going to a Christian university is a bit of a catch-22. Like, you're there at the university, so obviously there's someone there to encourage you to be active in your faith and pursue that kind of thing. But there's also the flip side where it's really easy to say, I go to a Christian university, I take Bible classes, I'm covered, and just leave it at that. So then you don't feel a need to go out and find a church or to, join a Bible study or something like that. I really can't speak from a secular university because I don't go to one.
That's what he's here for. We're going to get him next.
So
Hence the balance here on the table, you see. But you think there's also almost a degree of complacency that comes with it when you go to a Christian university. You're like, oh, I'm covered with just what I've got here. And,
yes.
And
yes.
that can expose you to temptation.
And honestly, if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the most dangerous feeling to have in a relationship with God is complacency. You should never feel satisfied like I'm doing enough. No, unless your son died on a cross for Jesus, you haven't done enough.
I like that perspective. That's good. So she kind of threw it over to you here with the secular university thing. What type of things have you seen at a secular university that might lead you to see why people are leaving their religious practices behind?
So one thing that's very important to people is that they feel comfortable. And at secular university, you hear about parties all the time. Like, you can't turn the corner without somebody talking about a party or drinking or something that's not Christian-like. And people, since they're away or since they're left the high school and they're in a different setting, they want to be comfortable. So since everyone's doing that, they'll be like, oh, that sounds like I could be comfortable there. That's where everyone else is going to be comfortable. I'm going to go there.
I think that actually gets back to one of the current event stories we were talking about, that, a lot of 20-somethings still have, teens and 20-somethings still have that urge for something spiritual, but they're just looking for it in other places. Well, it's kind of related. What you're saying is, I think, is that a lot of these people are still looking for a sense of community, a sense of belonging, and if we don't communicate well that, we have that to offer here, then they're going to look for it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And again, that's more the importance of, getting yourself into some type of church, some type of Bible school or Bible study. You need to, a vacation Bible school would work too, I guess, but some kind of Bible study, a Christian group, where you can get that sense of community, but in a Christian setting. But you're seeing people looking for it elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm also a personal trainer, so I work out with a lot of people. And that article you mentioned earlier talked about fitness and looking for places. So people in college, when they have a problem, they'll either eat food or they'll go to the gym. There's two ends of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people, the first thing they do is like, oh, I'm stressed out, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm not going to do anything else but go to the gym, then go home and sleep. So they don't reach out for God. They don't talk to other people for help. They just find something that they can get their mind off of it. So,
yeah. So people will fill that void somehow, one way or another. I think a lot of it is, if you are a spiritually involved teenager in high school, that you've got to be committed. You've got to understand that there are things with this independence comes responsibility, and you've got to be diligent about taking the steps you need to do to guard your heart. And you'll find that all these needs that you're feeling can be filled and satisfied in Christ. You just got to make sure you're going out there and looking for it in the right places, because you look for it in the wrong place, it ends up being destructive. Just look at the party thing you're talking about. How often does that end well? So.
Never.
Yeah, exactly. So one last thing I want to talk about, just for a couple minutes, because we're getting a little short on time here, and I don't know if you guys have experienced, I know I have to some extent, and we talked about this briefly in the episode from the adult perspective that I mentioned earlier, is that there are some studies out there that are indicating that the population, the professor population, so to speak, I'm assuming, and maybe you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't see this as much in your university as you might in yours, that there's almost an anti-Christian bias. It might be unspoken, but certainly not as friendly to the Christian ideals as you might find, you may be used to find. So I don't know, I'm going to start with Dylan, since you're the one that's actually attending a secular university, whether you witnessed anything like that or heard any stories about anything like that.
So I've never had a professor outright say anything bad about Christianity, but they've definitely had little disses every now and then. Certain classes, certain professors, depending on their area of expertise.
You're still in school, so I won't ask you to call them out by name.
They'll make little disses. They'll be like, oh, Christianity, and then they'll follow up with a bad statement, like it has the most suicides because of this, or other statements that I don't agree with. But it's hard you can't argue with your professor, because they control your grade, and in college grades are very important.
You're at a Christian university, all right? Have you ever either seen, heard about anything that's maybe set you a little bit ill at ease as far as your Christian worldview from the teaching perspective?
Well, actually, obviously not bringing about any names, but there are some professors who, yes, they're Christian, they're openly, yay, faith. But
that's in their syllabus. It says, yay, part one, says, yay, faith. Yeah.
That's their whole mission statement, is yay, faith. But they are still very, very opinionated in a way that feels quite contrary to the way, as Christians, we should behave. For example, there's one professor who did not like the outcome of the election, and constantly makes jokes about the political system, And, the Bible tells us to pray for our leaders, like, especially if, like, you're kind of worried about where they're going with things. Pray for them, pray for guidance, pray for your country. Don't sit there and in front of a bunch of impressionable, teens and 20-somethings make snide comments about stuff like that.
Either one of you had any closing comments that you want to make? Nikki, any closing comments?
Subscribe.
That's my line. She's stealing my thunder. Dylan, any closing thoughts or comments?
I just think it's important to find a church and just go make friends and stay close to God, because He's your best friend during college, during any time in your life.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much for coming. Both of you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all for tuning in. If you could do me a favor, please, go ahead. If you like this video, go ahead and click the like button. That's the thumbs up button here on the YouTube page. And go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like I said, we got some really cool episodes coming up down the line in the future. So if you could go ahead and subscribe, then you'll stay up to date and be notified about what we put out on our channel. Explore the Trinity Joppa channel. There's a lot more on here than just Trinity Talk Live. Also, Trinity Talk Live has its own Facebook page. We are at Trinity Talk Live Podcast. Please go ahead and like that Facebook page. You can use that to comment on some of our posts, send us messages, whatever. If you have ideas for future episodes, please let us know. That's a good avenue for you to let us know. If you have questions about anything we've talked about on any of these episodes, you can use that page to let us know that as well, and we'll try to get back to you. Next week, we do have another episode, Tuesday at noon. Like I said before, next week's episode is going to be what is it like to be a Christian in high school. So please make sure you join us for that. Yet again, I'm going to say thank you to Nikki Brown. Thank you to Dylan Brown. Again, no relation, but all right. Thank you all as well, and God bless.
In your word we will follow.